Welcome to Seminar Sunday, District 21's weekly episodic webinar series. This evening we are covering off leading by example. We have two very special hosts with us today, and I will introduce them in just a moment. Before that, I do want to remind everyone, because this is a weekly episodic webinar, we have lots of great topics coming up, including how we can help your club be distinguished. We'll have another session after that on pathways and many more right through to June 30th. It's a great honor to be here with you this evening. My name is Michael Bound, Program Quality Director for District 21. And one of the great benefits of this role is to be able to engage with folks from across the district, geographically or as a member, in Michelle's case, who's actually geographically located in District 7, Oregon State, but has joined us digitally as a member, a virtual member, I believe, of the first Canadian Toastmasters Club number 38, the club that made Toastmasters International. And we also have Raymond with us, who is a member in Penticton in Division K. Thank you both very much for joining us. Now, before I introduce Raymond, who's covering off the first section, I want to talk a little bit about the goals for this webinar. What is leading by example is the first question that we're charged with to ask ourselves, and steps we can take to lead ourselves and others as good examples. So those are our two goals that we've charged Michelle and Raymond with, and I can't tell you just how excited I am to hear from both of them this evening. So here's our two facilitators, and it is a great honor to introduce the first of the two speakers, Raymond, who has led, I believe it's over 20 organizations while serving in the military. It's Raymond.
Yeah, good evening. It's a pleasure to welcome everybody to my presentation. Okay, basically I'm taking this, my presentation is based on my work in the military, like Michael said. And my first slide is taken right out of Toastmasters International. And the reason why I took it out of there, because it is exactly what I think. Leadership is easy, if it weren't for the people. Now, one doesn't really know how tough it is sometimes until you have an organization with numerous people running around, and you have to keep things going smoothly. And it's people that you always talk to make it that far. Now, this quote is from Mac Anderson, founder of Successories and Simple Truths, two businesses that produce inspirational and motivational products and books. So does anybody have a comment about this quote? Oh, okay, if that's anybody? No? Okay. Now, when I started writing this presentation, I went back to Toastmasters and I used the jargon. You got to know your audience, and everybody knows when they give a speech, you got to give a speech that matches what the audience is going to be. And running an organization, you have to know your people, because they're the people that produce all the work and make the organization work. And you have to know how kind of people they are. I will say that with every organization, there's a majority of strong people. They're easy to motivate because they're there to do a job and they want to do it, which means that this type of leadership is fun to help, because they're on your side. They want to push the envelope and work with them. All you have to do is talk to them and help them find their way to go. But with every organization, there's about, I said 10% here of the people with issues you must deal with on a regular basis. This is where your leadership must shine the most, because that's where the problems are. And actually another saying is that you spend 80% of your time on 20% of your people. And I found that to be pretty true in all the organizations I was with. There's always issues with somebody, and the rest of them were pretty good throughout the organization. So does anybody have any comments on this particular slide? Nobody?
I agree with that comment about 80% of your time is spent on 20% of the people.
Yeah, it's one thing to do is to get to know these people really well. That way you always know what they're talking about. And if you always know them all, then you can solve their problems before it becomes an issue. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I'm kind of repeating myself here, but is that people matter the most, and they want to be heard. And I'll explain what when they want to be heard. They want to be cared about, and they want to feel they're part of the organization, and they want to have a level playing field. Those are the three things that I practiced while I was leading organizations. Does anybody got any comments, particularly about this particular slide?
Yeah, Raymond, this is Michelle. This is so true. And this afternoon, I was listening to or re-listening to some of Simon Sinek's YouTube videos, and he has one about leaders eat last. And that was his point. People will do anything for their leaders if they know that their leaders care about them. So my response to that is amen. I agree 100%.
Well, thanks very much, Michelle. Anybody else? Okay. Now, here's what I think being heard is. If you're leading the organization, you must go around and speak to everybody. You got to get to know them pretty closely, and you can do that at unit coffee breaks, unit parties, on regular occasions where you just get the staff together. And while you're mingling amongst your staff and letting them know you're available, you have to make yourself available, either by wandering around and popping into people's workshops, or you just have to make it commonly known that if they have some issues that they need to talk about, they can talk to you. The only problem is if somebody comes and talk to you and you miss their supervisor and you start ruling over top of their subordinate supervisor, then you could get in trouble, because you got to make sure your managers are all proud of their people and they can work with them. And a couple of times I've done that, where I skipped a supervisor, and I've got a lot of feedback from other people about doing that. So has anybody ever experienced that, where they've been missed their immediate supervisor and jumped higher?
Yes.
And what was the reaction?
Sean or me?
Yeah, I was going to make a comment that the other way around, though, where I have, as district director, have skipped over, I don't know, let's say a program quality director to do something, and it was the responsibility of the program quality director, and they rightly called me out and said, Michael said, called me out on that and said, look, it's their responsibility, and to be very fair, it is their responsibility. And if you want to have that, if the people who have the direct line of responsibility are not given the authority to do their job, then you are disabling them from doing their job, and you are stepping outside your bounds. So it's inappropriate. So you got to make sure you do go through the proper line of command or chain of command. So
you have to work with your managers to deal with the staff that are causing some issues, and let them be fully partner in that decision process. And where you have to make decisions, they have to agree with what you're talking about. I've seen so many organizations where there's not a level playing field. Matter of fact, in the military, was not a level playing field for maybe 20 years of my career, because it was old school, and that meant unless you knew somebody or were a particular background, you didn't get the same opportunities. And it was kind of blatant. As a matter of fact, at one point in the military, you could not get promoted above the rank of colonel if you had an ethnic background name like mine, Ukrainian or any style. So that was not a level playing field. The other thing is, one thing we had happen, where we surveyed everybody to find out what the biggest thing that bothered them, and that we found out was that they wanted to know where they were in the organization. And that means in comparison to other people, where do they fit in? Were they in the top 10 or in the top 50, whatever? So they can make decisions on their life and forward. So that was not happening in the military until we had this big cultural change, where if used to be that the general would sign your performance rating after you saw it, and you would never see that part. They changed it so where you saw it after the general saw it, so you could know what he said about you, the one that really counted. And this way, there was no backdoor decision anymore, and everybody knew where they were being going forward or being held back, and why. And then you can make your own decision on whether you want to stay with the organization, because if you're going to be a static a person not to promote it, if you like that, then you just stay. At least you know that that's where they have you in the organization. If you don't know, then you're confused and it's not easy to work. Yeah, well, so if I had this one incident I'll talk about where I had an employee who worked 24 kilometers down the road, and then one day we transferred him back to the main base, and we took away his travel money, and he grieved that. And when I was talking to him during the grievance, he kept saying, well, I always got this money. I said, you always got this money because you went out down the road 24 kilometers, but you're not doing that anymore, so we cannot give you that money. So I refuse to give them the money. But there's some people that still think that they need to get stuff even though they're not qualified anymore. So it happens on a regular basis. Being cared about. You must really get people to understand that they're treated like everybody else, and they have similar opportunities for their particular expertise. And when you have problems with staff areas, you correct them so everybody gets the same fair chance. Your staff eventually in the longer term will realize that you're really do care about everybody's issues and problems, and you make sure that when an opportunity comes up, that the people that qualify, all of them get consideration, even if they don't want to be part of it. At least they know that they could apply. And if there's somebody who didn't get qualification, missed out on it, then you may have to work to get them included downstream. So that's what I think being cared about is making sure everybody knows opportunities are available, and that when issues come up, that you deal with them and that you help them out to get to the next stage. Okay, next slide. Okay, I'm going to speak about some of the techniques that I used when I was the base engineer at two bases. It's like being a city engineer, except that you have the runways and everything else under your authority. And it's one thing to make clear: the runways that we have at the bases are totally controlled by the military, and nobody else flies in those runways unless we say so. So that was my responsibility, to make sure the runway worked and make sure everything else worked. One thing I did to everybody is to make sure everybody saw my entire program in advance of the year start, so they could see where we're going. And for example, I discovered that most years we could not spend our money because engineering has got so many different things that can go wrong. So I would put out 70–80% of my programs out early at the start of the year. And my aim was to get 75% spent by the end of September. Never ever made it because of things that happen. But at least people knew this is the huge program that's out there going forward. I always would have kept enough money to finish the year off, but there's lots of people who didn't spend their money. I got their money eventually and spent more money on my organization. The other thing you can do is you got to go out and visit your staff where they work, so you can see what they do, and you can discuss maybe get some ideas. And if they're accomplishing something really well, you can comment accordingly saying, that's amazing how well you're doing that and achieving. If they're not doing so well, maybe you could talk to them about getting some advice for them how to do it better, or you might know what they could do better. But at least you have to keep them engaged on a regular basis. And if they need help, sometimes people don't realize that when they're at the working level that things are not going as smooth as they would like. But if you get somebody interjecting in at the senior level and says, well, we could look at doing this and it will make your job easier, and you go and do it. some of the things that I found when I wandered around were that some tradesmen are slow workers. They don't get things done really fast, and some are writing in the contract, some are sleeping the job. That's just par for the course. It's nothing that you won't see in any big organization. And here's an area of concern, and I'll tell you, it's probably the most important thing to you personally. You cannot lose your credibility. You have to have it with everybody. You have to be a strong leader. And there are people in your areas who are always always want to be your friend, or they want to get special favors from you, or worse, like happened to me on a number of occasions. They want to bribe you with stuff. I walked down the hall one time in my organization. I walked by my supply section, and a guy called me from inside the supply. He said, "Hey, boss, come over here. We're going to show you the latest tools we got." I said, "Well, sure, I'll go over and look." So I went over and looked, and I said, "Oh, that's very nice. You could use those things." And he said, "Do you want one?" I said, "What do you mean, do you want one?" "Well, you can just take one. You can have one for yourself." I said, "No, absolutely not. I'm not taking stuff for my personal use. It's for the organization." The other thing that was kind of funny, that every August, my office supply budget almost doubled in price. And it's a thing that you'll see in a lot of organizations, because in August is when most of the people are stocking up goods for their kids to go back to school. So somebody's taking some stuff on a regular basis. It just happens. You can do something if you want, but it's going to happen no matter what. It just matter how life works. Credibility, you have to have that all the time. You can't be special friends with anybody. You can't party outside of the thing with people on a regular basis. You have to be almost by yourself, but friendly and easy to get along with, and get to know your people by walking around and seeing everything.
Thanks so much, Raymond. That was very informative, and obviously you're speaking a lot from personal experience, and that is all the more beneficial in terms of our growth and understanding what you've experienced and how that parallels with our individual lives as well, things we've experienced. And I especially appreciate how you talked a little bit about things like bribery. And I was kind of thinking, as you were talking about that, boy, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a cash thing or a supply thing. It can be a whole lot of other things that become bribery-like. So
special favors. Yeah.
Special favors, absolutely. And that's something just to think about. I think actively, when somebody is offering you something that's too good to be true, what exactly is this? And start to kind of redefine that.
Yeah. I would say the most dramatic thing that happened to me was one of my guys said he wants to go shoot somebody. He wanted to go shoot somebody, and then he took off. Needless to say, we didn't let him back in. Anyways, I guess I'm done unless there's more questions.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Raymond. We're now going to pass it over to Michelle, who is a past district governor from District 9, our friends to the south in Oregon State. And she's a member of Club 38, the first Canadian club, the club that made Toastmasters truly international. She joins them, of course, remotely via video, much like she's joining us today. I'm going to stop sharing so Michelle can start sharing her slides right now. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you very much. And just a quick correction so I don't get roasted by District 7. It's not District 9, it's District 7. It's easy to remember because 7's my favorite number. District 9 is over in Idaho and a bit of Oregon, but District 7 is the larger portion of Oregon. And because I'm going to share this later on, the recording on the District 7 Facebook page, I wanted to make that clear. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I wanted to say to Raymond that I so loved your talk because a lot of the things that I will be talking about, you actually covered. So we'd never, Raymond and I, we never talked about what he will be presenting and what I'll be presenting, but it seems like we just have a perfect segue, so to speak.
That's
So
great.
the first thing, in fact, I was trying to stop myself because every time you'd ask, do you have a question or do you have a comment? I did, but I didn't want to take up your time. So I just wanted to say that, and you will see as I cover my slides, that a lot of the things that you mentioned, I will also be referring to, which is great. Now, for those of you who know me, I am obsessive with acronyms, just like Dana Lemon apparently is also obsessive with acronyms. I guess I'm in good company. To help me discuss this and to help us remember, I'm using the acronym example. But of course, the letter E is exemplify what and how, and then explain why. We'll go to that in a while. But right now, I just wanted to go over the acronym example. Now, of course, X, it's really hard to have an X, so I'm using liberties. X, expect the best from yourself and others. A is accept comments, complaints, and criticisms. M is minimize failures, flaws, and faux pas. And oh, this is a lovely one. We'll get to that in a short while. And also the P, praise promptly, publicly, and positively. That's another really fun one. Oh, they're all fun because the next one is lead with love, loyalty, and learning. Raymond, this is where I was really resonating when we're talking about leadership, being, walking the talk. That is exactly what this will also be covering. And finally, the letter E, exude excitement, energy, and enthusiasm. So before I go into that last one, because that's my favorite, I wanted to go back to the exemplify what and how by asking you, what do you see? Anybody, just unmute yourself and say, what do you see on this particular slide?
Fall.
Fall? Did you say fall? Okay. But what are these? Are they like candy? What are they?
Well, they're quite the opposite.
They are vegetables, correct?
Yes.
Well, I have a little story about vegetables. And let me just stop the screen share so I can talk with you guys when I share my story about how I used to hate vegetables. You couldn't get me to eat vegetables. Well, then one day, my sister-in-law said, may I leave my daughter with you for a couple of weeks? She had some issues, and so she wanted to leave her daughter. And her daughter, my niece, was probably about 2 years and a half. She couldn't quite talk straight, so she was definitely around that age. And being a good aunt, I went and bought vegetables and cooked them up for her and had it on her plate and was telling her, you eat vegetables, they're very good for you, they'll make you grow tall and strong and healthy and all that good stuff. And she was looking at my plate, and my plate had no vegetables because back then I did not like vegetables. And she couldn't really put into words, but I could read what she was saying in her eyes. Obviously, she was saying, how come you put vegetables on my plate and you tell me they're good, but you don't have vegetables on your plate? That really jolted me. That was years ago. And I've always thought about that. And I've realized you can talk till you're blue in the face. But if you are not walking your talk, then nobody's going to believe you. Which brings me to one of my favorite quotes. Example is not the main thing in influencing others. It is the only thing. And another of my favorite quotes, which I don't know if you know the story about Mahatma Gandhi being asked by a mother to tell her son to stop eating too much sugar. And Gandhi said, come back in 2 weeks. And so the mother traveled back to her home province and came back 2 weeks later. It was almost a day's trip. And Gandhi sat the boy down and said, Son, you should not eat too much sugar. It is not good for you. You promise? And the little boy promised. And it was like a 2-minute talk. And the mother was flabbergasted. And she asked Gandhiji, why did you have me leave and come back in 2 weeks? And you just spoke with my boy for 2 minutes. And Gandhi said, you see, 2 weeks ago, I was also eating too much sugar. Wow. He wants he wanted to be able to say to the boy not to eat too much sugar because he wasn't doing that either. That is really being the change that you want to see in others, in this case, in the little boy. And one of my other favorites, and we're Toastmasters, so we want to talk about talking. What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you're saying. That's Ralph Waldo Emerson. Isn't that so true? So that's the first and probably the most important thing about leading with example is lead by example, obviously. But I also wanted to go on to a few other points and of course, to use my acronym, the guideline number 1 then for leading by example is, as I said, exemplify what and how and then explain why. You have to be an example of what is possible and put yourself in the other person's shoes, as Gandhi did with the little boy, and I eventually did with my niece, and explain from the listener's perspective. Because if you explain from your perspective, that is not going to have much of an impact on the other person. This I'm showing you is a very long thing. I'm not going to read the whole thing. This is an actual quote from a Toastmaster who shared their club's experience with pathways. And he was saying, basically what he was saying is that you can complain or you can rave or rant against pathways, or you can strive to do the best you can. And that's what they did. And he said that their club had been struggling, had almost folded up. But because they went for it, they did their best. They just aimed for the best. No complaints, no excuses, just solutions. He said that they are now President's Distinguished, 9 over 10 goals. And he said they're going to get the 10th goal very soon. So this is a fabulous example of the second guideline, which is expect the best from yourself and others. No excuses. And it has to start with yourself. You cannot expect the best from others if you're slacking off yourself. Remember, you have to lead by example. And the third one, which I really love, is the letter A, accept comments. There will always be comments about things, especially in any organization and even at home. There will be complaints and there might even be criticisms. But if you're a leader who gains the respect of your followers, first of all, acknowledge the feedback. And if the comments are valid, affirm them. Answer questions if you can. No comment is an answer. So might as well just give an answer. Accept complaints. If we had more time, I would talk about how a complaint is actually a gift. So accept it. Thank the person for bringing up the complaint and do your best to address concerns. And if you make a mistake, and we're all human, we make mistakes, admit it. And if necessary, apologize. Not an apology where you say, well, you confused me with what you said, so I'm sorry. No. Apologize sincerely. That's what true leaders do. The fourth guideline is minimize failures, flaws, and faux pas. Again, we make mistakes. We have failures. I remember I had a boss years ago. I knew English better in, reading rather than listening. So I said one time, we were in a meeting, and I said, what I meant to say, it was the word AWRY. Well, I'd seen that a lot, but I'd actually never heard it. So I said, and you're free to laugh, I said, Ori. And so people were looking at me, and he got from the context that I meant Ori. And so he said, oh, that's a really nice way of pronouncing that. That sounds really cool. And so it didn't embarrass me. And in fact, he then started talking in terms of what else I knew. He highlighted my strengths. Like he said, Michelle reads so much, and she knows that word paradigm. It was very new. Covey was very new back then, and paradigm. And he deliberately mispronounced it and said paradigm, so I could correct it and say, "Oh, you mean paradigm?" So that was amazing, and I've always respected that particular leader because he inspired me, and I always felt with him that I could always take second chances and third chances. It was never like next time 3 strikes and you're out. I always felt that I was being encouraged to learn. And that is what a leader by example should do, because we all make mistakes, and when you make the person, your followers, feel that it's safe to make mistakes, they will own up to these mistakes, and you don't have to worry about things being swept under the rug or kept from you. You'd be the last person to know about it because they're afraid, or they don't feel that it's safe to come out. Which brings me to my 5th guideline. I said earlier, I love this. Praise promptly, publicly, and positively. And you might be thinking, what, can you praise negatively? Yeah, there are people who will say, well, very good job. Finally, you did it. This is the first time I've ever seen you do it right. Duh. I mean, that's praising, but it's a left-handed compliment. And also, there are people who will praise months later. You almost forgot what it was that was being praised. Or who will praise you privately but call your attention publicly. That's the opposite. So when you praise, make sure that you are very specific. Cite the situation. Hey, Mike, during the district conference, that was a situation. And when you were organizing the DTM hug line, what you did was really great when you had everybody stand up there, and the applause was so positive, and you could see how people were tearing up. People were really touched by what you did. So I'm really happy what you did. I really want to thank you. And you say that to everyone. You say it publicly. So praising publicly, promptly, and very positively encourages others to strive or aspire for praise as well. So praise the situation, praise the task, the action, or the result, or a combination of all 4. And finally, I keep on saying my favorite, they're all my favorites. So guideline number 6 is lead with love, loyalty, and learning. This is what I was saying to Raymond earlier. He was talking about people, leaders who care, or that the followers want to see that their leaders care. Oh my gosh, that is so powerful. One of my favorite books is by Ken Blanchard, Lead with Love. And then there's another book which I really love. It's called Leading with Love. And if you can't see the fine print, but it says lessons from from the maternal love. And finally, my absolute favorite in terms of love or leading with love is Love Works by Joel Manby, where he cites love is kind, love is patient, love is forgiving, love is trusting, from Paul's letter to the Corinthians. I love it. And I put several links here in the slides that I will share later on. You can click on these links. There's just beautiful YouTube videos. Some of them are Simon Sinek. There's Peter Sanjay. And there's just so much to listen to, be inspired about how you can lead with love and loyalty. The late Dr. Stephen Covey, my remote mentor, because I was following his teachings before I actually met him, was a real leader by example. And he used to say, you have to be loyal to the absent. And Raymond said something about this as well. When people are not there, don't criticize them. Criticize them when they are in front of you. Speak your truth to the person, not behind the person. Jose Miguel Ruiz, in his book, The 4 Agreements, same thing. He says, be impeccable with your word. Be loyal when people are not there, and be direct when they are there. I just love these. And people will know this, and they will trust you at your word. And finally, guideline number 7 is exude energy, excitement, and enthusiasm, because you cannot lead people, or you can try, but it's really hard if you say, guys, let's do this. We need to do pathways because, we don't have any other choice. We really have to do pathways. So might as well do it. So if you're doing that, personally, I'm thinking of ER, like, oh boy, oh boy. And okay, you don't have to be Tigger. People call me Tigger, so okay, fine. You don't have to be Tigger. You don't have to be bouncing up and down, but at least have a bit of that energy and excitement and enthusiasm so that people will want to follow you wherever you're going, be it pathways, be it presence distinguished or whatever. People will want to follow you by your example. So to recap, leading by example. First, letter E, exemplify what and how, and then, of course, the why. Like Simon Sinek said, people want to know the why. X, expect the best from yourself and others. A, accept comments, complaints, and criticisms. M, make room for failures, flaws, and faux pas. P, praise promptly, publicly, and profusely, and positively. L, lead with love, loyalty, and learning. And E, exude excitement, energy, and enthusiasm. I hope that this will help everyone to at least feel that desire to be a leader by example. And at this point, we will take questions if we have time. If not, back to Mike or Sean.
Hi, it's Raymond. I agree with everything you said. It's really important. One of the sayings I used to have to myself was, "You got to celebrate the little things because the big things don't come along very often." And I did that on a regular basis. And it was in your slides you had, about telling people right away what's important and what good things they did, and you have to do it right away, just like you said. That's great.
You bet, you bet. Thank you, Raymond. And Michael, I know it's the bottom of the hour. I'm sorry that we didn't get to start on time. So if you want to just close it, I still have 2 minutes, but I'm fine with that. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Michelle and Raymond, both, for joining us this evening for a very special edition of Seminar Sunday on Leading by Example. Please tune in future weeks to learn more about great topics, Toastmasters, leadership, and communication, all very valuable to your growth in the Toastmasters program. Thanks again, everybody, for joining.